Welcome to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Tamara Scott Live with Truth for Our Time. We thank you for joining us today. You may be listening in on the webcast, which is live each Wednesday at 10 a.m. In the studio. Webcast One Live. One is spelled out, one, O-N-E, webcast1live.com. We thank J. Michael McCoy for making that possible for us to use the studio. And also, you can listen to this show at noon on Sundays at 99.3 FM. So tell your friends if you hear something here today and you want them to hear it on Sunday, let them know. We thank also, while I'm thinking of it, we'll just go right to our sponsors. We thank Christians for America, Crave, Christians Reviving American Values Every Day, ChristiansForAmerica.com, a sponsor of ours, and we thank them for partnering with us. If you're interested in helping us, partnering with us or sponsoring, having an ad during the show so that we can continue to get this information to Central Iowa and thus along the internet internationally, you let us know. J. Michael McCoy would be the one to contact, or you can contact myself. You can also go to tamarascott.com for the archives. You can get clips and links from our show on that website and just information, good information. We talk about a variety of issues on this show because if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. And so we help you when the headlines hit home by living God's Word in today's world. It doesn't matter what the issue is. There is a help and a hope in His Word. Today, joining me, I'm very, very pleased. I have a new friend in Iowa. His name is Dr. Nate Ottman. He is the assistant to the president of the Family Leader. You're familiar with that organization. Are you also familiar with Family Research Council? I imagine that you are. Tony Perkins and the Family Research Council have been around for years. I always enjoy their email alerts. I don't know who writes the catchy slogans, the titles, the captions on their news alerts, but they are a great play on words, very clever.
Suzanne at FRC writes those, Tamara.
Suzanne, she just does a great job with those. So Dr. Nate Ottman, thank you for joining me here in studio today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
For our listeners and our viewers, you are from Iowa.
I am. Lived here almost my whole life. Took a brief time out to go hang out in the jungles of D.C., and I am very happily back in the state after that 5-year absence and loving every minute of it.
And you look fairly normal from being in D.C. for 5 years.
Well, I survived.
Right? Okay, so you grew up in Iowa. Were you homeschooled?
I was.
So just a little encouragement to every parent out there who is slugging and laboring with the homeschooling of their children.
Yes, and I was dual enrolled in public school and private school, so I kind of did the gamut.
You did. You did it all. So then you went to college where?
Bob Jones University in South Carolina.
And I'm calling you Dr. Nate Ottman. The title is because?
Doctorate in Education. Finished up in December.
Excellent. Then you went to work with Family Research Council, which is quite a feather in the cap of any individual.
I really enjoyed working at FRC. The heart of the organization, the issues, the passion, the integrity of Tony and the leadership of the team is exemplary, and it was a pleasure to work there.
So one of the reasons I asked Nate to join me today is the headlines that we're seeing. It is continuing to happen more and more, and I think we're going to hear about it more and more as Christianity faces hostility in America. We don't think that that's coming, but we've been warning you it is. On Facebook last week, I actually liked a union page. That might surprise you. But it was a union page, I believe, out of Illinois for fire workers. We used to call them firemen in my day. Firefighters is now the politically correct term. Sent home from work because they refused to take something so offensive as the American flag off of their equipment.
Wow.
This is what I don't think people understand. It will start with those, of us, the Christians, but it will continue until the other side has silenced, removed everything they find displeasing.
It's really an iconoclasm of morality in our culture, and that's why it seems like it's everywhere.
It is everywhere, and it continues to grow. And, of course, we've got the issue right here in Knoxville. Hopefully, Doug Jeff will be joining us later today to give us an update on the city council last night, and I want to get into that a little bit later. But let's talk about Family Research Council. For those of you listening, do you remember the headlines? Nate, was it a couple of years back, 3 years back?
Yes, it was 2012.
2012. And what was the date?
I believe it was August 12th, 2012.
So just past the anniversary, if we call it an anniversary.
Yes.
Take us through that day. You were in the office.
I was in
Family
the
Research.
office. I had just started that week.
Oh my goodness, that was your first week at work?
That was my second full day on the job, I believe, that week. So I walked in and I actually did a tour of the building with the gentleman who was shot protecting the office. I was actually in the lobby at the time of the shooting just previously. So had my start date been moved, I could have easily been in the lobby. And I was actually up on the 6th floor, which was too far to hear the shots. And so we got alerted through message. But we were not alerted to whether or not the shooting had stopped. We just knew that someone had been shot. And so you get that awful feeling of, I'm trapped on the 6th floor of the building, and the only way down is through the path of the shooter. And that was troubling. I'm a concealed carry permit holder, but I was in the District of Columbia, and so I was unable to protect myself. That was one of the thoughts that went through my mind. Your mind kind of goes to 100 places all at the same time. It goes to, what? And then, uh-oh. And then what do I do? And then you just kind of realize I'm a sitting duck, potentially. And then thinking through my family, this is probably on the news. Is my wife seeing this? What is she thinking? We had just had a discussion about safe jobs versus dangerous jobs. And all of these things were going through my head at the same time. One thing that I don't remember was a strong fear. And I really believe that was God, because I think the natural reaction would have been panic. But I don't remember panic happening to me or the colleague I was talking with when we found out.
Yeah, I can't imagine not having panic somehow ensue a little bit. And that Holy Spirit must only be, that calm must only be from the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So how long of a time was it between you and you got the message? And was that message on a computer?
I think it was computer and text. Sent to the email, popped up as an alert. There's been a shooting. Our building manager, Leo, has been shot. And the building was sealed. So we were essentially stuck where we were for several hours, and kind of getting details as they came in. They notified us that the FBI was on the way, so we knew that the situation was in hand. I don't remember the timetable between that first message and when we knew the building was secure.
Why did they call the FBI in so quickly? How did they know it wasn't just a shooting? Well,
this was in the District of Columbia. So you have that federal issue. The other issue was a gun crime. Someone had been shot, and this ended up being, in fact, the only case of a terrorism charge being brought in the District of Columbia. This was a case of domestic terrorism. The only one prosecuted, I believe, under the law passed since 9/11. So it was in the district. So this was a very high-level case that touched on a number of federal laws.
They called it a act of terrorism, but not a hate crime.
Act of terrorism. And, a hate crime is not something the Family Research Council wanted to pursue. We believe if you murder someone in cold blood, it's a crime, regardless of the reason that you do it. So hate crimes are terrible, but I think every murder is a hate crime.
That's right. And why should one carry more weight than another? A life is a life is a life.
Yes.
Okay. So you're sitting up there, you're hearing things, you're up there for hours. What's the next thing? What happens next then?
Well, what happened next was once the building was secure, we still couldn't leave. We were essentially stuck in the building all day while the investigation was going on. And we met on the 3rd floor of the building, and our president, Tony Perkins, and all of the staff present got together and just prayed as a team. We prayed even for the shooter. And I can honestly say one of the things, again, I was a new employee, so this is all first impressions. I can't imagine. And just the heart of the team, I can honestly say nobody there was bitter or angry in a hateful or hurtful way. Obviously, you're upset that your colleague was shot. But to pray on the day while you're still in the building for the shooter, I think is a powerful testimony to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then as the details emerged, found out that our colleague had been shot and still was able to wrestle the weapon away from the shooter. You can see the YouTube footage from the security cameras online. And then after he had the gun, he said he felt God say, "Don't shoot him." And so he put the gun down, and the FBI came and were able to secure Floyd Corkins, who had come into the building, who was pleading for his life. And to me, that was just a testimony that doing good to your enemies, even in the heat of the moment, where most people would have said there was a struggle ensuing, there was a justifiable self-defense motive there. So in that heat of the moment, when you have an arm that's shattered from a bullet, to still be thinking, what would God have me do, is just powerful testimony to the power of the Holy Spirit.
Let's take our listeners and viewers through what was the shooter's thinking. It wasn't a random act.
No, it wasn't.
Take them through. We had the food from Chick-fil-A. So he was angry with Chick-fil-A because of
the marriage issue. Right around that time, Chick-fil-A Day had occurred, and there had been a lot of publicity over the owner's stance on marriage. And Floyd Corkins had volunteered at the local LGBT community center in D.C. and took a different position on marriage than the Family Research Council. And he used a map from a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center to locate what were labeled as hate groups. FRC was just one of the targeted groups that day that he had on his list. And he targeted us because we were listed as a hate group on the Southern Poverty Law Center website, and still are to this day.
I believe Concerned Women for America is as well.
Yes, and one of the most surprising things to me is I don't know what else you could do to demonstrate love for your enemies than to set a gun down after you've been shot. I really don't, and to pray for them. So if there was any hatred that day, it certainly wasn't from the Family Research Council. And it's sad that when you disagree with a particular position, you can be labeled a hate group to the point where people feel compelled. The plan of the shooter was to take the Chick-fil-A sandwiches and rub them in the faces of the victims as he went through the office and shot as many people as he could. And so this was going to be a gruesome attack. Once again, it's one of the only mass shooting attempts in which nobody died, including the shooter. Just another, I could tell you story after story of the people that were praying for FRC before and even during the shooting, and just the presence of God in the building. Even the comment in the aftermath by the FBI counselor, just saying there's something different. These people here don't react in the same way to a shooting as other people that I've counseled. And just to see that testimony as a difference.
I hope our listeners are hearing that. I hope you're hearing what was said. The FBI agent noted, was it a calm? What was it that was different?
You know, after a mass shooting attempt in an office setting like that, the FBI will send counselors by. And the counselor went by, I believe, every staff member and just talked to them, because you get the emotions of the moment, but then you still walk in and out of that building every day. You're still labeled every day. It always goes through your mind. You never know who the next person could be. And we regularly have other threats. You hear about the threats that go through or make the news, but there are other things. And so the counselor, in going through talking to the people, realized there's a calm here. There's a source of strength from somewhere else, because these people are unnatural in a good way. They aren't reacting in the way I've seen other people react. And I believe the comment, it was 3 years ago, but I believe the quote was, I want to know what these people have because it's different. And I think that's a testimony to the power of Christ.
It absolutely is. I'm talking with Dr. Nate Ottman. Nate Ottman is an Iowan, back in Iowa, working as the assistant to the president at the Family Leader, another group that is often targeted.
Indeed.
And so we're thankful that you're here. We're thankful that you as a native Iowan have come back home and given us your skill and your talents for the Lord here. But if you're listening and you have questions, you can probably find Nate at the Family Leader. Mm-hmm. And the Poverty Law Center has not taken FRC off the hate list.
No.
And when we come back after these messages, we'll talk about what's in our headlines right now with Kim Davis and whether or not they're talking about her. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for listening in. And again, if you want to find the archive of this show, send it to a friend. You can find those at tamarascott.com, tamarascott.com. My thanks to Ryan, our producer, for getting that website up. I was so helpful and supportive. I dragged my feet the whole way to even have a website with my name on it, but I appreciate, Ryan, you making those possible. Talking with Dr. Nate Oppman. Nate Oppman, Oppman.
Yep.
With the family leader right here in Iowa. Came out of Washington, D.C. with Family Research Council, but is an Iowa native, thinks like us, talks like us, understands the history of this nation. Thrilled to have him back in our midst here in the state. We were talking about Family Research Council, the shooting that took place August 12th, was it?
I believe it was the 12th.
August 12th, 2012. A hate crime in itself, but we're not calling it a hate crime. But the reason I bring that up is the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yes.
How they say it. What is that group?
Southern Poverty Law Center was started in the middle of the 20th century. I think they've been around for about 50 years now. And they really focused on race issues and did some good things with race issues and dealing with equality during the Civil Rights era. As they've moved forward, they've expanded that, and they've really become an organization that is simply an extension of the leftist agenda. They have a hate map, which is what they're famous for, used in a number of federal training videos and such. There's been controversy in the military over using some of their materials by individuals. And so there's been kind of a tension there. One thing that people don't know about the Southern Poverty Law Center is that they do things under other names. For example, they're teaching Tolerance magazine, goes out to schools. And there was a controversy in Hawaii schools recently with them actually paying teachers to use their materials.
Oh, really?
So this is something where, and I used to have pleasure is the wrong word, of going through some of these magazines that they would produce and the things they would ask children to do. And really it was unteaching the natural things a child would understand. For example, a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl. How do you teach kids that that's not true? And they would essentially give you tips on how to confuse a child in kindergarten by doing exercises and things. And it was really quite appalling, but it sounds nice. Teaching tolerance, I think we all understand that the word tolerance can be used in a good way. It has a nice connotation in our society. But when you are simply removing morality, it becomes dangerous.
And tolerance is no longer tolerance under their definition. It is dominance, allowing their agenda, dominance, whether it's in the public schools, in the public square. And I'm curious that you bring up Hawaii because we talked about it on this show. Representative Bob McDermott came on this show. He found the fourth grade curriculum that was not only pro-homosexual in nature, but it was inaccurate when they had taken body parts, renamed them to a reproductive organ, which they were not.
Yes.
So that they could teach inappropriate behavior to fourth graders. So I'm only too ironic that this is the state you bring up for the Poverty Law Center being active. Have they come to the aid of Kim Davis?
I don't know. I know they have spoken out in Alabama regarding some of the marriage issues there. So they've been active on the issue, but they sometimes are active more locally as well as nationally.
And usually not on the side of accuracy, biblical truth.
No, absolutely not. In fact, they often team up with the Justice Department. No surprise there. And they're really active in the education system. They've been involved in the Anoka-Hennepin school district case in Minnesota, I believe in 2012. They've also been involved in a case in Mississippi as recently as last year, involving, again, what they would call tolerance and equal treatment, but really just promoting an active and open agenda that goes against the biblical definition of marriage.
Nature, God's law. The I won't pronounce it right. The school district you brought up in Minnesota, that's the one over the bullying case?
There were bullying cases, but Anoka-Hennepin, if you remember in 2012, there was, and leading up to 2012, there was a marriage amendment or a marriage question on the ballot in Minnesota. And the Anoka-Hennepin school district had a policy that teachers would remain neutral on a question on the ballot, which I think is a very reasonable
what a great idea.
Policy. They can go ahead and teach and let parents vote and teach their children at home on
Since children can't vote.
Yes,
right.
Indeed. And so there were issues with bullying and also with this policy that were discussed in the case. And what eventually happened was there was a consent decree issued, which is essentially the federal government taking over a local school district.
That is the one I was thinking of then. And so the warning we have is because of the LGBTQ program and the anti-bullying program, we are warned. Michelle Lentz from CLP Action, I'm not sure what that acronym stands for right now, CLP Action, is warning all of us that when we have these bullying programs in our schools, the anti-bullying programs are a door open for the federal government to then come in, as they have in this district in Minnesota, with a monitor from the Justice Department, as if the Justice Department, wouldn't have other things to do. They're now sending monitors into public school systems, literally federalizing the local school districts.
Yeah, and these things, it's a web, because you have a private lobbying organization like SPLC that will work with the Justice Department, and then also provide suggestions for filling the positions you mentioned.
Oh, how convenient!
And yeah, again, so you have this, rewarding of friends in a sense, which makes sense. It's human nature to do that. But it really tramples on justice.
So for Iowans out there, we are in the midst of the campaign cycle. We have the opportunities to vet the candidates that are out there. And I would just say to you, we just had the school board elections in many of the districts. And without getting into results, I'm telling you, You need to be involved. Whether you have kids in school or not, it is your tax dollars. But beyond that, as a Christian, it is a mission field. And if you are not spreading truth, your children, those children, whether they're yours or the future leaders of this country, are somebody else's mission field. And so you need to be involved. We need to be asking our candidates the tough questions on these issues. Yesterday, 2 of our candidates were in Kentucky. And Kim Davis, the clerk who had refused to acknowledge same-sex wedding applications, was released from prison.
Yes.
So I want to kind of go through this. Mm-hmm. First off, she wasn't arrested.
Well, she was arrested and taken to jail through a contempt order by the judge.
Okay. I really am uncomfortable with these contempt orders where a judge can verbally toss someone in prison with no trial. It wasn't that she broke the law. I'm hearing that she's refusing to uphold the law. From what I am understanding, she was the one who was upholding the law. Kentucky law still has traditional marriage on the books.
That is correct.
So she was saying, and that was what her question was all along, show me the law that says I must now recognize same-sex marriage.
That's a key part of the case, but even her request was even simpler. Simply take my name off of the marriage licenses. And that wasn't even something that the court was willing to acquiesce to. So really you have to ask yourself, what are they demanding? They're demanding that Kim Davis promote marriage, so-called, which she believes is morally wrong, in violation of her religious beliefs.
Right.
And that's where you get into the issue of what is law. And the left would say the law is whatever we believe it to be. That is progressivism. Progressivism is not anchored in truth. It's anchored in what's moving, whatever is really popular in the day in which you live. But rule of law has to be anchored in something. Otherwise, you can't truly have a law. And I think Kim Davis is showing that. Whose law are we following?
Right, right. And so I get that she was asking to have her name removed, but I'm frankly glad they didn't, because what that does is it moves forward this idea that Christians can't be in public square or in public service or work for the government.
Yes.
And I've heard a couple of candidates make the comment that when you work for the government, you have to do what the government says. My goodness, aren't we glad? And we always get in trouble when we bring this to a Hitler. But it was a Hitler in a government who told employees what to do. And we wondered why they did it.
And you know, if you study these things, people do jump when you reference those things, and it's I've studied the Holocaust. I was in Israel recently on the Yad Vashem Memorial Day, and so that's an issue that's important to me. That issue is just blown up, but when you study it, what you realize is that nothing that bad, which is not what we're near today,
right,
starts that bad. It does
right.
not happen overnight. And so I think you have to be careful in your direct comparisons, which we are. But I think you would be foolish not to learn, how does a nation, an advanced Western nation, get to the point where it would allow slaughter of innocents, where it would throw people in jail because they don't agree with the government, where it would remove them from all public offices, including local clerks, which is something that happened in the 30s in Germany. And we're seeing elements of those types of things, not of the Holocaust. We're seeing elements of a tighter government control on the moral conscience of the nation. And what happens when the government declares that it is the moral arbiter of a nation,
right,
then you have nowhere left to appeal. Our founders could appeal to God, to heaven, even in their declarations to England. Where can we appeal if 5 unelected justices are the supreme arbiters of morality in this country?
And again, she was not breaking the law. She's the one who is upholding the law.
That is correct.
I think that's key, that people are missing that.
It is key. I think another thing that's key that people have to realize is there are 2 working definitions of the law here. When you and I say law, we think of an elected legislature that passes binding laws through an established process. When the left thinks of law, they mean decisions that agree with them. And that's really a key difference. The courts are supposed to decide disputes under the law.
Right.
They're not supposed to create new laws. And it doesn't take a rocket science or a fancy legal degree or background, though those things are great, to determine that the 14th Amendment does not demand that every state in the Union recognize a form of marriage that has never existed prior to the 21st century. That's an absurdity in legal terms. You want to talk about the rule of law? That is certainly not upholding the rule of law. That's simply changing a law to conform with modern notions of right and wrong. And we've seen it in the past with other issues. The Supreme Court can be wrong.
Absolutely. 4
justices said that this decision was appalling, under which Kim Davis was supposedly found to be in contempt. And the fact that our country simply acquiesces to 5 justices, and we even have many presidential candidates saying it's the law of the land. Why are you running for president? If you're simply there to enforce the will of 5 members appointed over decades, then what are you doing? Why do we even have a Congress? And part of the problem too in this matter is our Congress has become inept. They have
neutered themselves.
They have indeed. They know they're in dereliction of their constitutional duty to reign in the courts. And so I think we have to be careful in throwing it all in the courts. The courts have as much power as we let them have. They don't have a police force. It's quite remarkable that they've amassed the level of power that they have. And as you said, it's disturbing to think that you or I, if we were in a position simply for saying, I believe that marriage is what it's always been and what God ordained it to be, the union of a man and a woman, could be thrown in jail on the word of a judge.
And she's upholding nature's law, which is mentioned in our Declaration of Independence.
Yes, indeed.
So it's not something that she's stretching away from our founding, but she's standing on the foundations of this country. We've got to go to our break. We'll be right back after these messages. I hope you'll stay tuned. I'm talking with Dr. Nate Ottman. We'll talk about something more locally here, being the Knoxville situation, when we come back and return. Hope you'll stay with us.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed, fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing. We have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
We're talking about Kim Davis, the recorder out of Kentucky, who is standing on the law of her state. She continues to ask, and she's recognizing the existing law of her state and asking, show me the law that has changed, because like Kentucky, like Iowa, still has unreconciled laws with a recent court decision.
That is correct.
So good conversation during the break. Did she have the grounds to do that? I believe she does. Our producer was asking you about the court's ability, their power. And some would say interpret the law. I never say the courts are to interpret the law, only in as much as to uphold the law. That's their role, is to uphold the law.
Any law that needs interpreting did not go through a proper legislative vetting. And if you think about that logic, that would be like me issuing a command that I don't understand myself. The legislature, if you've read bills, even in our state, they're very clear. They define every term. It's almost onerous. You know what the term means, but they're very specific. And so the power that the court has taken to itself is, rather than resolving disputes under clear law, they have begun to add things to the law. And the greatest social issues of our day, abortion, same-sex marriage, these are things that the court has added under the 14th Amendment to our Constitution. They are things that were not thought of. The 14th Amendment very clearly was dealing with recently freed slaves, so that states could not oppress them, could not revoke their rights to trial by jury and other things. This did not apply to these new issues that have come up. And the courts now have negated, in many cases, the votes of the people, the United States Congress, and many of our state legislatures.
And as we were talking on the air, we've said this before. I believe it's Federalist Paper 78. I think it's Hamilton that wrote it. Saying that from memory, so check it out for yourself. But the comment, his writing was, and this, remember, one of the framers, early founders, so certainly knew what the intent was, that if it goes through the judicial process, it should impact an injury, individual injuries, to find remedies. But if it's going to impact a body politic, then it needs to go through that legislative branch. The Supreme Court, the court system, was never to have this much weight on the legislative or the laws of the country as far as creating them. And I guess another example I have, because we have a similar situation in Iowa. 2009, our courts came up and found an unimagined right for same-sex marriage. Yes. Unimagined rights.
You got to have a great imagination
if you
to
could
be
wrap
in
your
the judiciary today.
Right? And so I don't know how we can. Well, I've already lost my train of thought on that. But here, there with their unimagined rights, we in Iowa have the same unreconciled law.
We do.
DOMA is on our books.
That's correct.
The Offensive Marriage Act is on our books. The legislature has never chosen to come back and reconcile the law because they know the votes aren't there.
That is correct.
They don't have the will of the people behind them. So this is how you foist new movements onto a people, through this activist agenda and activist judges, something that wouldn't otherwise pass a legislative or a referendum issue. And we seem to have no recourse over it other than someone like a Kim Davis who stands tall. In Iowa, it was our Attorney General, Tom Miller, who is very well liked, has been in office a long time. He ruled, made an edict, that 99 county recorders must accept the marriage applications for same-sex wedding licenses. In my opinion, he broke his oath of office to uphold the Constitution. He forced 99 county recorders to break their oath of office as well. So if anyone here were going to face contempt of court, in my opinion, it would be an attorney general.
No, I think one of the challenges is when you're dealing with court cases today, if you believe that the court is the final arbiter of right and wrong, which is the position of the left if you look at what they say when we're talking about decisions that are favorable to them. But that is their position. When you hear Christians and conservatives and people on the right, they speak in terms of a law that is higher than any man. And our republic was founded on the concept that there is a moral law that supersedes all men in all positions of government, even kings. And because we are founded on that, we have always had recourse to appeal to our God-given rights. The rights found in the Constitution are not rights that are simply granted by a benevolent government. They are things that were so obvious to our founders that they felt that we'll write them down because we want people to see them, but we don't want people to feel like these rights that are written down are here simply because the government wrote them or because these are all the rights there are. We want people to understand that there's a God that grants rights that are greater, that is greater in authority than any legislature, any king, any individual. And that's the ethos upon which our country was founded. That has eroded. It is eroded in education. It's eroded in the courts. And so we have a moral dilemma in our country between those who believe in a higher law and those who believe in the rule of men.
We've seen exceptions for women's wearing hijabs, or I think that's the name that you call the head covering. But I believe that you take a job voluntarily. You choose where you work. And if you can't do the work, then you ought not work there. I do believe that. It's a freedom of religion. You have the freedom to decide where you're going to work. But this seems a little bit different when she's the one upholding the law.
Yes.
It's not just about her freedom of religion. It is about due process. Law means something. If we want to change it, there is a process in which we go about. It is long and arduous for a reason.
Yes.
And it is not with the whim and the trends of society in a court that is unelected or unaccountable.
Absolutely. Kim Davis is providing a chance for Americans to speak out against a ruling by 5 justices that was wrong. It went against the law of nature, and it went against the law of the state of Kentucky. And she's simply pointing that out.
So for those who want to argue, make this on a religious issue again, we'll go back to the founding of this country. I have the Declaration of Independence right in front of me, and the first paragraph talks about the laws of nature and of nature's God. Second paragraph talks about those rights that you're talking about, the endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, the same rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, that those in China should have, but cannot celebrate because their military, their government has not preserved those rights.
Yes.
Which is why we stand here today and fight on these very issues, because we don't dare lose them. The last paragraph mentions the Supreme Judge of the world and also his protection and divine providence, mentioned 4 times.
Yes.
One God, not multiple gods, not diverse groupings.
Yes.
I want to talk about that as well, because we go into this Knoxville situation. City Council met last night. From what I'm hearing, we were hoping Doug would call in. I think he's probably just overwhelmed with everything happening right now. City Council is going to delay any decision, which is something I think they often do when they want to hope it dissipates and the light of day fades. Some of the things some folks are offering, one is that they have to have a multiple display with something from a Buddhist, something from the Islamic faith. I would say right here is our example. The Declaration of Independence does not have a multitude or diverse display.
That's a great point.
It mentions 4 times the one true God that this country was founded upon. It is those Christian principles that set us apart from all other nations.
You know what else is striking? To think that a display, this is simply a display that people look at, could be considered a violation of religious liberty. But throwing someone in jail simply because of their beliefs on marriage is considered a necessary function of government. There is a logic there that I don't understand.
And there's something in the Constitution about a litmus test, not having a litmus test to serve.
That is correct.
So again, being used, something the liberals usually use to protect themselves, now being used against a conservative or a Christian.
Yes.
And so we have just 45 seconds left. I want to hit on this as well. They're also being told that they should deed that little section of land with that little cross on it. I will just say to you folks, that may sound noble, but it is ignorant. You do not have to deed that away. You were in D.C., Dr. Ottman. Moses is atop the Supreme Court building.
Yes.
Did they deed that section of the building away?
No.
Again, does not need to happen. Do not give up land on this. Do not give up territory on this battle.
Yep. Stand. That's what you need to do. Just keep standing.
Dr. Nate Ottman, thank you for joining me today.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
He's with the family leader here in Iowa. We hope you'll stay tuned. Rob Keller will be joining us talking about the prayer vigil for Pastor Saeed.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids? Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, I'm J. Michael McCoy, and about 20 years ago, I went to a used car salesman by the name of John Hewitt. He had a little shop over there on North 2nd Avenue called John's Auto Sales, and I bought a car. I found that experience to be one that I had never had before from a used car salesman. He was honest, he was dependable, he had integrity, and he did what he said he was going to do. Well, over the years, between my kids and grandkids, I purchased 7 vehicles from John's Auto Sales. And last month, I asked him to be a sponsor. I can tell you about their huge selection. I can tell you about their years of experience. I can tell you about their honest integrity. But all I really need to tell you is that I bought 7 cars, and you can trust them. John's Auto Sales, 5435 2nd Avenue, Des Moines.
You need a good ride when you hit the trail. Trust the man with the cars, and he goes by the name of Big John. Big John. Big John.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back to Truth for Our Time with your host, Tamara Scott.
And thank you so much for staying tuned with us. I am Tamara Scott. We appreciate the fact that you are listening in. Do not take it lightly. We are here to help you when the headlines hit home, giving